Maital, thank you so much for joining me on 20-Minute Leaders. It is such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Where are you calling from?
California, from Silicon Valley, the heart of Silicon Valley.
Yeah, it's Silicon Valley, but now it's shelter in place and everything's remote. Yeah,
From home.
from home. Well, let's hope that by the time this airs, then everything is back to normal. But we'll just ride the optimism wave on this. And Maital, Oracle, Roche, Global Head of Marketing, Medicine, so much to talk about. Can you just give me a brief rundown of who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Uh, sure. Um, well, it's really interesting. I was so fortunate throughout my life to have really great opportunities that presented themselves. So I had the opportunity to work in Wall Street, in Silicon Valley, and now in a global pharmaceutical company such
Yeah.
as Roche. And it's really, I mean, the interesting thing is really about passion. The one thing that really drives me is my passion, and my passion for really understand people. So when you understand people, you can understand everything, and you can move everything. So throughout my career in marketing leadership, it was really the driver to understand the social psychology of what drives the individual, what actually holds back the individual from buying decisions or from other things. And the second passion that I have is my relationship, is the people that are around me that I love living with, I love working with, and the third one is really data. I became a data nerd. I became an insights nerd, and I realized how data and that digital transformation actually helped few industries. Right, when I was working in JP Morgan, I was fortunate to be part of this digital transformation of building the drill down investment, for institutional investors, etc. And then in marketing, when we used to have ads and now we have metrics to understand how to, how to create messages that resonate, and you can see how heart and head and body works all together on conversion rate. And now in medicine, the data changes everything, and data and it's beyond the data. It's really how you connect the dots. So that's my passion that actually brought me to where I am now.
Okay, I already have so many questions just from that minute brief. I don't even know where to start. Let's go with social psychology and medicine, and being a global head of marketing for such a huge company like Roche. How do you even go about trying to understand what consumers think, love, adore, engage with?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm just going to make a correction. I'm not the global head of marketing of all Roche. It's just the digital aspect of it, and the software.
Only the digital aspect of it. Okay, sure. Yeah, let's put it that way.
So digital now changing medicine as we know it today, right? So yeah, I mean, if you think about that, we're trying to understand in understanding in social psychology, we're trying to understand the makeup of the human, right? What drives the human to make certain decisions, that behave certain behaviors, and how do we really resonate with this individual, and then later on a segment to drive a certain behaviors as a marketer, as a business leader, etc. So in medicine, it's almost the same. We're trying to understand the biology, we're trying to understand the genetic makeup, we're trying to understand the clinical makeup that makes the human as it is for personalized care. And think about that. I'm parallelizing it right now in marketing. So driving personalized messaging and driving personalized healthcare. So there is a lot of connections in many ways. And it's all about, the technology that's enabling us to do that. So how do you use digital transformation in really understanding not just the human, but the segment of people or subpopulations, and how do you actually resonate with them?
And but Maital, it's very clear to me, I think, and I think it's a right intuition that when you look at the social psychology and what innately motivates people in medicine marketing, it's very different from when you're trying to sell Salesforce or when you're trying to sell any other B2C product that you can find in the supermarket or an electronics store. So how is it more complicated? Is it very different?
Good question. So there are certain things, that you need to think about, who's the buyer? Is it consumers? Is it patients? Is it a company?
Right.
So, we're very, it's very interesting point in time right now to be living in, because the technology helps you actually with social psychology, with the selling process, with the the resonance of what you're trying to sell. So if you think about software right now, because we are in time of pandemic, right, the acceleration of innovation is huge in healthcare, right? So even if it's a medicine development or software development for all these healthcare workers and professionals to buy new technologies because they need that. So that was like a really opportunity actually for the small companies to come with new technologies that helps, and if you think about human psychology, if I was a CIO right now in a hospital, in a healthcare environment, I need to provide the right technology. So how do you connect actually with those people and to drive them to buy your technology? And I think this is a good time for startups that have really nice virtual digital. This is the point of acceleration.
Yeah, I actually just had a fascinating chat with Alyssa Rapp, who's a lecturer at Stanford Business School and in Chicago booth, and she says very similarly, there are startups that, it's hard to raise capital, people have to bootstrap right now, but there are startups who need to take a step back and understand we can actually put the gas pedal on right now. This is our time to accelerate innovation and really adopt the new market that's forming here. Maital, but all of that is true, and if I have a team of 5-6 people in a startup, I make the decisions, it's all easy. We're talking about a big company, we're talking about huge corporates with huge ladders of decision making. So how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, you can see that different companies, different brands actually reinventing themselves, rethinking about their mission, rethinking how they actually, what's their purpose in life. And then, as a brand, you need to think of what is your identity and how do you go beyond selling a product right now to really understand what's the goal of your target audience. You really understand who is your audience and how can you connect beyond the product right now. So I think as a big company, you really need to understand how to connect, and sometimes it's not the selling point. Sometimes it's just who you are as a brand, as a company, and what's your mission. So being exposed to quite a few companies actually during time of crisis, being in Wall Street during the meltdown and being here now in healthcare, in the eye of the storm of healthcare, of this pandemic of COVID-19, with the scale of it, you really need to give time to rethink your strategy and rethink and reflect on it and really connect at the higher level, at the purpose level, at the mission level.
Wow.
That actually builds trust for the big company, that they're not opportunistic and they're really trying to resonate and keep resilience and be constructive and be positive and show, the together and the shared purpose with their customers. It's an interesting thing to think about. Across the globe right now, we all have shared experience.
Yeah.
This is like a unique.
So rare.
So rare, we all have the same goal of fighting COVID-19. Since when we all have this goal together? If you're in Italy, Africa, or Japan, or Silicon Valley, we all actually at the same situation. And I think companies starting to understand and pivot, right? right now to connect with their audience. And this is the social psychology at the end of the day, you know, beyond product.
How important is it in your mind for the average CEO or entrepreneur to have a good grasp on social psychology and a lot of these innate mechanisms that you're touching upon?
Yeah, I think that every CEO really needs to have a really good understanding of people and of more than just a person. They really need to understand what drives their target audience. Who do they talk to? It's beyond the persona, you know, where people talk about, yeah, I created like a persona, I can teach some
Right.
people. But you really need to have this human to human connection. And it doesn't matter in what setting, if it's a small startup or a big corporation. If you really don't understand who is in front of you and what their, you know, hierarchy of needs, if it's Maslow or another, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you can't really sell. So every CEO really need to understand the human part and the soft skills and what drives this person in front of you. So and navigate through different times, hard times, good times.
No, and you know, this sounds like a skill. I'm actually enrolling in the summer in a social psychology class at Stanford, but I'm also coming in with the humility of understanding that probably the only real way to practice it and to understand it is to then just be a leader, whether it's, you know, being a commander in the Israeli army or any other army, or going and leading teams and companies later on. To me, it just makes so much sense that this is one of the key elements of being a good entrepreneur and a good founder. Just knowing who you're speaking to, know your audience, know how to lead them, what motivates them. And I definitely, this is something that I'm taking to heart. I'd love to hear a little bit about what it was like being in Wall Street in the meltdown. I don't get to hear that very often. I was too young back then too.
Yeah, that was quite an experience, let's say. Let's say this, now that I'm watching all the movies that came after,
Yeah.
it resonates with me. It really speaks to me because I was right in the heart of it. You know, I was working at JP Morgan at the time in New York City. It was like, you know, pulling hair for a few days, and
Wow.
then we knew what's coming. You know, people were so nervous. You know, I started at the hype of Wall Street, you know, when all, you know, everything that you think about investment bankers, and it really, you know, some movies really reflected on that very accurately. It was tough. It was not an easy experience, you know. It was very, very hardening. You know, people worked their whole life on things, and then from the banking perspective, you see, you know, you can connect those numbers to actually people's lives, you know, and you see the magnitude of what it means to actually being on the other side. It's not a simple thing to do. You kind of almost need to disconnect your personal life from looking at those numbers.
Definitely. You know, going back to the digital transformation with medicine and some of the questions that you're working on right now, give me a little bit of insight into your work and what are the big transformations that are happening? Is it different in medicine and marketing digitally in medicine than it is in other ways?
Yeah. So, you know, just to give like a context into what's going on today in medicine and technology. And
great.
You know, so there's medicine, and the biggest driver right now and the biggest innovation in diagnostics, in treatment decisions, in monitoring, in the hospital and outside the hospital, it really is the nexus of the scientific discoveries, the technologies that enable them, and actually the medicine, you know. So let me give you like a little bit of some data. You know, if
Please.
You were an oncologist coming out of med school, like let's say in the 50s, medical knowledge, it took medical knowledge to double itself about 50 years.
50?
Back then.
Wow.
If you graduated in the 50s. If you graduated from med school in 2010, it would take for medical knowledge to double itself about 2 years. Nowadays, it's 73 days 73 days for medical knowledge to double itself. So
Wow.
how can one compute all that? How can the brain, the human brain, actually make a decision when, you know, everything is obsolete? More and more and more information in, you know, in shapes of scientific discoveries, in shape of papers that are being published. So this
Wow.
is the avalanche of data in medicine, right? It's staggering, you know. So the knowledge gap is growing. So you need technologies really to close this gap, and there are technologies nowadays.
Right.
So this is one of the biggest challenges in medicine today. You know, how do you enable, if, as a healthcare institute, how do you enable your teams and your doctors and care teams to really make right decisions? So so that's the trend. And now if you think about the technologies that enable this scientific discoveries, like let's say the genomic evolution, you know, not just we map the genome, that's great, but now we can see specific, it's personalized medicine, precision medicine, that you can see specific mutations in specific disease. So the knowledge of the biology and all that is also growing. So very interesting how this three of technology, scientific discoveries, and medical innovation coming together. And this is where the innovation happens. If it's forms of AI that collects data, that analyze the data, that predicts certain things that's happening. If it's virtual, you know, virtual tools right now that allows you to connect with different specialties and make the right decisions and hear different things. So anyway, but this is the trend. This is where we're going. It's really bringing data and creating more of a personalized medicine.
Sure.
At scale.
So is it more so that, you know, 50 years ago when you wanted to develop a new insight into what's happening in the medicine arena, then it was mostly, you know, intuition, guesswork, some case studies, and today it's really, the knowledge is there, it's hidden, a needle in a haystack of piles of data that's accumulated every year, and it's really a race between companies to understand the data and make sense of it. Is that where we are today?
So I think it's really, there's a lot of technology that exists right now. I don't know if I don't think it's actually a competition. I think it's a collaboration, because nobody can really, you know, solve all the problems in the world. It just doesn't exist. So I think what we see today actually is interesting collaborations that complement each other to really bring a solution for this problem of this gap of data. So data, you're right, data is siloed, and data has different standards, and you can compare apples to oranges when it comes to data. But then when companies work with each other, then actually that's where the insight sits. So of course we are in a market and there's a competition, and sometimes you see two companies working on the same spot, but it really is the beauty actually of what's going to happen is the sharing and collaboration of insights, because it happens in silos. And we know if healthcare goal is really provide the better health happens in the synergies.
I love it. I love it, Maital. Thank you so much for this time. Before we leave, and I can't believe 20 minutes are already up, but before we leave, I want to put you on the spot one time, and I want you to tell me 3 words that you would best describe yourself as. I actually already know the words from the very first answer that you gave me in this talk, but I'd love to hear those words anyways. So go ahead.
Yeah, good. Another good question. So I think really one of the things is, like I said from the beginning, it's passion.
Yep.
And the second thing is resilience. I think resilience and curiosity, you know?
Definitely. And you also mentioned relationships that are so important to you.
Sure.
Love it so much. Maital, thank you so much for the time. Thank you for all the work that you're doing during these very difficult times. And I know you're working on very interesting things that unfortunately we weren't able to discuss here. But I can't wait to see them one day. And thank you, and stay safe.
Thank you.